Yes. Firstly, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being on time. Everyone that has started to tune in. I know it's 3:56, so this is just a quick housekeeping check. We'll be going back on mute till about 4 p.m. And at sharp 4, we will be kicking it off. Panels are set. You're all set, and we're very, very happy to see you all here. Back in 2 minutes. And until then, get your water bottles next to you because we don't want you to leave the eventual conversation for the next 1 hour. Uh, Again, very, very grateful for the panelists and the attendees who are choosing to spend their early Thursday evening with us. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, we're just waiting for everyone to now, continue to sort of join the join the webinar. We still have about 30-40 seconds to go. Also, for the attendees and for the panelists, we're also streaming this from the Naukri Hiring Suite Facebook page. That's also live, and going on parallelly. Um, just as we hit 4, I just thought I'd wish everyone a good evening because I think and hope everyone's doing well, safe, surrounded by loved ones because I think that is key in these times. That's something that we've seen be the core focus throughout everything. Uh, Now that we are sharp at 4, I think we're good to go. And firstly, I wanted to just thank everyone for being here. Good evening. Welcome to another edition of the Step Up webinar series by the Naukri Hiring Suite family, which includes brands like Naukri.com, Resdesk, Employer Branding, IAMJobs, Hirist. My name is Prashant Sharma. I am a member of the Infoedge marketing function, and we're super happy to have you join us this Thursday evening or afternoon. I think right on time. Uh, we sincerely hope that you're staying safe and taking all the precautions in these pandemic times. Our objective through this series is to ensure that we all can learn from the experiences and insights of industry leaders and together try to navigate through these uncertainty filled times with regards to recruitment and overall business. uh, it's a wonderful pleasure to have 4 esteemed panelists today. But before I bring them in and discuss the topic, here are a few key things to keep in mind about the eventual webinar. Um we're starting at 4 p.m. sharp, and we will be ending it by 5 p.m. So it's a 1 hour webinar. We were lucky to receive so many questions, in advance with the registrations that I think we've received close to 300 to 400 questions. And of course, it's not possible for us to take all of them, but we've organized them into a flow and a structure so that we're able to at least talk about all the points, even if we're not able to take each and every question. Uh, we'll be doing a few live polls as well, to ensure that we are able to interact with all the attendees as well. And of course, time permitting, we will also try to take a few live questions as well. Uh, Eventually, if I'm not able to take each question or bring everyone into the conversation, my apologies in advance. That's a part of that's the tough part of my job as well as the only non-specialist here. Uh, we've got a great panel today, and the topic for today is, in fact, I believe, and it's something that has come across from the feedback that we've received from previous webinars as well, that it will be a huge and important component of the new normal, which is remote hiring. This is a topic that we've seen possibly the most interest in, and while the world continues to heal, recover, and I think hiring will also have to adapt and make new processes. This is something that we're really excited about discussing through this webinar. Uh, Hope you have a few notepads set and your pen and paper ready, because I'm sure you will want to take a few notes from some wonderful insights that will come in. To talk about this today, we have 4 panelists. We had 2 first time, 3 next time, and today we have 4. If I talk about the overall aspect of experience, now, if I combine the experience, it's close to 6 decades. So 60 years I have next to me on this panel of working experience of across industries, and I'm really, really grateful to have that. Starting with Vinay Trivedi, he is the CHRO at ToneTag. Vinay is, has worked across industries and is someone who's been very, very kind to us in our previous endeavors as well. So we're very grateful to have you here, Vinay. Jitendra Panyar is someone who's the CHRO at Moengage, another very, very fast and rising company, and they've already done some great things. Vinay himself, doesn't necessarily only talk about his HR, management strategy. He also considers himself as a polymath. He's a management consultant, thought leader. He loves cricket as well, and is a passionate speaker as well. Uh, Megha, coming to Megha, Megha is the human resource director at Fiserv. Again, close to 15 years of experience across, Fortune 500 companies. I think whether it's diversity and inclusion, leadership development, hiring, or in fact performance management, I think she's someone who's had great experience working in those fields as well. And of course, our fourth panelist, Mr. Khalid Raza, he's the talent acquisition leader for North and East India as well as Bangladesh at EY. I think a lot of folks within the HR fraternity already know him because through his time at IBM Satyam, he's someone who's worked across verticals and is someone who's also worked across geographies. And we're very, very grateful to have all of you here. To start things off, we usually have a small introduction, but today I thought I'd just try to spice things up a bit. And rather than any long introductions, I'm going to go one by one to each of you. And what I'm going to try to ask you is give me three insights. Now, the first question is about a very, very important aspect, which is, we want to encourage positivity in these times. And I want you to tell me and the attendees one positive individual experience from your personal life, one positive professional experience, from whatever you've been seeing through your teams and at organizations, and anything else that you believe is a pleasant surprise in this COVID crisis. I'm going to come to you, Megha, first, and I'd like you to just, unmute and go ahead with that. Megha, please tell us who, what, and why would it be one positive, professional, positive, personal, and one pleasant surprise?
Yeah, thank you, Prashant, and thank you so much for having me here. So let me start one with professional first, because we are on this pandemic thing. So our global CEO always says that if you don't take the most out of the crisis, then you haven't taken the benefit out of the crisis. I see today that professionally, what we never thought is achievable today is something that we all are now moving towards, whether it's work from home to work from anywhere, to even people showing a lot more empathy, to people being a lot more empathic towards not just in India or cultural sensitivities, but just beyond boundaries that we have gone today. When you get on a call globally, the first thing people ask is, hey, how are you and your family? I think I haven't seen that kind of a connection that people have built with COVID-19. And, earlier people used to say, hey, how's the weather? But today everybody starts a conversation by saying that, hey, how are you and how's your family? So I think I've seen that cultural change, with COVID-19. And I think it's a huge professional achievement because, we've started to talk about your families. We've been more empathetic. If your child is, moving in and around or making a noise over a call, it's okay now. Earlier, it wasn't okay professionally. So I see a lot has changed culturally, and we've started to move boundaries. And I think, which is a big thumbs up today from a professional standpoint with COVID-19. Something personally, I feel, days have gone much longer than what it used to be, which means I never thought that, I can manage house chores, which I used to never do, along with 12 to 14 hours every day, because the days have absolutely gone long with virtual, way that we work today. And along with, if you have kids at home, then of course it's an added day long for you. So I feel personally, while you're able to be with your kid and see everything what's around in your home, but I never thought that in a day I can achieve so much, which just gives me personally a lot of space to say, okay, I can do this as well, which means, why don't we, I start thinking differently. I think that's a personal orientation that I've got into, which is saying, I could never think I can do so much, which I'm able to do today. So which is a great personal achievement for me. I think one surprise for me, in last 2 months, sitting in my workstation and seeing my balcony, I haven't seen so many butterflies in the environment. And why I'm saying that is, I sometimes feel that, with COVID-19, with traffic not being there, with us not splitting and garbaging in and around, sometimes I feel the nature is healing and maybe we are the virus. So it's a restart button for all of us to think differently, to say that, with this pandemic, do we want to learn around how to save environment, how to think differently about where we work, how we work, what do we do with the nature? I think that's a pleasant surprise for me that, that conversation would have taken so much longer, but now it's not become a pressing need for each one of us. So I hope that answers.
Great. I think that sets the context and introduces you to the attendees brilliantly as well. I think some great shares there. I'm going to come to you next, Vinay, and I'd like to hear the same three shares from you.
So thank you for sort of having all of us here. I think from a professional perspective, if I were to talk of HR, this has been one of the biggest opportunities that the HR fraternity has got, where you don't have to push your managers to say trust people, trust remote, trust somebody not being physically present. They've just adopted to it. If there's anything that will come out of this pandemic for HR, is change management is going to be a lot more easier. If somebody calls up and says he or she is working from home, people will not doubt saying, oh, I think he has something else to do, or he has an interview to attend, or he has something else to do. So that's a big, big positive, which is very underrated, but a big positive for the HR fraternity. I think for me personally, there have been a lot of things that have happened because of the additional time that sort of I've got. I've lost 6 kilos in weight by picking up a lot of physical exercises, including household chorus works. We call it cardio, which is otherwise jhadu pocha, but we used to call it cardio. That is definitely a great personal hit. I've launched a YouTube channel. I've launched my video logs. There's a lot happening. So I've been super busy in this pandemic. And a surprise element is we never thought as a family we could live together under the same roof without moving out and not fight. I think my mother realized this very early on, and the day she said lockdown started, she started meditating, because she's like, I'm not used to all of you staying home into my territory, so I better start meditating. The positive is we've all survived. So that's my...
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, and congratulations on the fitness as well. I think that's always a pressing priority. From fitness, I'd love to transition to Jitendra now, because I know fitness means a lot to him as well. Jitendra, the same three aspects from you.
So hi everyone, certainly very glad to be here. So for me, I would say the personal and professional kind of is very, very similar, because I think it's an integral part of me, whether it's the professional side of work or the personal side of life. I think what I have learned and seen, and what's good has come out, is the appreciation of life. And that's why, I wouldn't want to kind of, differentiate this. I believe professionally, what I've also seen, in the last 4 months, not only in my organization, but across organizations, is how people have started appreciating life. And for more understanding, it's more around, what you do in offices, right? The kind of social interactions you have, the kind of relationships that you build, and the kind of complexities you manage, and the hardships, right? Now we know that, the hardships that we manage, on the other side of the table, are certainly very, very different. So I think there's a lot more appreciation of life that I see, and that's what my personal learning as well. On a personal front, I mean, there's nothing, which differentiates that as well. I could never, I would say, do a lot of things, even while, I do a lot of things, on weekends and, post work as well. But I just realized that, there are simple things in life, and occasions like this, I wouldn't say occasion, I mean, calamities like this actually help us understand we are not missing quite a lot of things, even though, we are having a lot of things, but I think we certainly at times, don't appreciate and take things for granted. So I think both from a professional culture and also personal perspective, I would pick this one, which is appreciation for life. In terms of surprise, so this is something, where, I really have to kind of think hard, because I am, in general, not having like too many surprises, as an experience. But I think I never thought that, I could live alone for about 4 months, not get bored, not have a lot of complexities at hand. So I think in the last 4 months, I have graduated beautifully, in this new environment, and I'm staying in a 3 BHK all alone, right? So in Bangalore, wherein my family is in Delhi, I could never think that I could do that, because I've never done that in my life. This is the longest period, wherein I've stayed alone, except my travel trips and other vacations, etc. So I've not gotten bored, and I do not have any complaints in terms of, okay, I don't have mates, I have to kind of cook. I never cooked in my entire life, and this is the time where my parents are super proud of me, because at least finally after 35 years, I could learn how to make something. So I think that's the most pleasant surprise I have for myself, wherein I could be all alone, doing a lot of things, doing a lot of reflection, connecting back with people, understanding relationships, and realize that, okay, wow, this is something that I should have done much earlier. So yeah, that's my take, Prashant.
I think that's a great share, Jitendra. Thank you so much for being so honest and transparent about your own experience as well. I really appreciate that. Khalid, over to you.
I'll try my best just to add something to whatever all of us have already added. But thank you so much for having me. I think it's great to know about all of us. I think when I heard this question, I was just thinking to myself, what is new? And then I realized everything is new. So then I had to struggle. What is one thing that has really stood out for me? So flexing the household chores muscles, to flexing your emotional muscles to deal with people, to flexing your other muscles, which are other not used in terms of change, the drastic changes that we have seen. So I think I learned a lot of skills. Obviously, all of us have. In the professional front, I think the experience of managing such a kind of situation and still running with the operations, and at the same time thinking about what's going to happen in the future and preparing yourself for it, I think it's a great experience for all of us, not just for me. And I've seen some of us really standing out in terms of this entire chaos. And that has also highlighted the kind of potential we want to look at in terms of hiring people, because that relates back to what kind of people you want to have. That's from a professional aspect. So I've also seen in a professional front, I'm going to just take a couple of other things, is I think the culture of working remotely, and dovetailing on what Vinay said, the trust aspect, or the aspect of moving from number of hours to the outcome, has started happening. Instead of tracking what's going in, we are focusing on what's coming out. And then the other piece which has also changed is from a place perspective, we have focused on pace now. So we are not bothered where you are. And I've worked with IBM for a decade, and I was fortunate to work in remote, operation for almost 6-7 years. I work from home. That's the culture that existed, but I think that culture is now prevalent, which is going to help us. In terms of surprise, I've got list of surprises. For example, I have learned how to save money. I have learned how to, look at a situation, same situation with a different mindset altogether. But the larger one that I see is a change, acceptance which people have got, because they've understood that it's easier to change yourself and your environment and adapt to things. I think that's going to help us, bounce off faster from this.
Great. I think thank you so much for sharing that. And I think with that, we're good to actually go into, the first aspect of what we wanted to discuss today. One very prevalent aspect that's come across in about 50-60 questions that have come in has been the relationship with the hiring manager. How does the relationship with the hiring manager work now, and how does that happen? And before we step into the question with you guys, and I'll share a question as well, we'd just like to quickly take a poll as well, because I think at this point I'd love to understand from the close to, I think, 180 plus folks that have already tuned in, I mean, how has it been for you? How comfortable are your hiring managers with the virtual hiring process? And I think the poll is about to come up very, very shortly. There will be 5 options there as well. Yes, as you can see, I think the polls there. So how comfortable are your hiring managers with the virtual hiring process? Extremely uncomfortable, moderately uncomfortable, no impact, moderately comfortable, and extremely comfortable. So we've covered all options. Uh, I I really do hope that the answer that we're about to get here, helps us get into the next question as well. Uh, and I think we'll just take about 5 to 10 more seconds for everyone to vote. Uh, I think the hiring manager
Why
discussion.
can't we vote?
Yes,
Why can't we vote?
because I will ask for your opinions on on the webinar itself, and of course I think this is something that I really do want to hear these guys out first, because I think we've been talking for a while. Let's hear them out as well. Yes, I think so. The result will be coming up shortly as well. All right, so they're moderately comfortable, but we've got about 55, 15, 3%, 8, 9, and 19%. Great. So I think that does hold a certain amount of positivity within. But the first question, and I want to ask both Vinay and Jitendra about the same. The question comes from Rachna from Samsung, as well as Lata from Motherson. Both of them asked a similar question. How do you establish trust with hiring managers when they aren't the most comfortable with the remote hiring process? How do we ensure that we've not only gained their trust, but we've started to make them comfortable about it? I think, Vinay, if you could go first.
Sure. I think whenever a hiring manager expresses discomfort about not trusting the candidate, I think all HR folks have to ask this question to the hiring managers. How will the candidate trust in the company that the candidate has not even seen or had any possible exposure to, in terms of how the workplace is going to be, what's going to happen? Remote interviews are as scary for candidates as it may be for hiring managers. So the minute the hiring manager realizes that he or she is not the only one who has trust issues, but possibly candidates may not trust as well, because they may have this look and feel issue. There'll be a lot more appreciation of hiring remotely. Is my quick antidote to this question that hiring managers keep asking.
Yes, Jitendra, what's your take on that?
So I think I feel there's no one right answer to this or one perspective, because for all the 182 people, it might be very different. So I think it's dependent on a lot of things. So each one of us actually asks this question, to themselves or to their organizations or hiring managers, saying that why is there lack of trust, right? And the answer to that may be very, very different. So I may have a very different answer to what Vinay may come out with, right? So the first start to this is to understand, why is there a lack of trust? Is it because hiring managers, are fearful of change? I mean, there's a lot of bias which is existing. And many times, we understand that there's a lot of bias. And I'll tell you, a very interesting story. When I used to look after, hiring for my own team about five years back, someone actually told me that, if you are too strict in hiring, right? Why are you kind of moving from one particular way of hiring to other hiring? I realized that, I was trying to hire a clone of myself. So I was biased. So I think all of us, have our own biases as well, right? So I think this is the start of it. You have to first understand, why is there no trust? Is it because of resistance? Is it because of, discomfort with technology? Is it because, I don't really understand the HR processes, or on the capability of, the talent partner or the recruiter? Once we have been able to understand, where are the trust issues, we essentially have to look at it, like any other change situation. It's not primarily because of COVID that, we have to solve something different. This situation may arise when you're trying to, let's say, bring in a new ATS as well. The same situation, arises, when you are wanting to kind of, hire a different, geography person, right? So I think the case of change is pretty simple. You have to really understand, what is the case of change. Talk to your people involved. And the best thing that, you should do is always be very, very honest. And I think this is one situation wherein I believe that honesty is the best policy. And considering the COVID situation, you have to be totally very clear to, for your hiring manager, saying that, this is the landscape. This is the talent. We can't operate, in a physical environment. This is the problem statement. You let us know, what we are going to be doing. And interestingly, everyone understands that, it's a very difficult and a different situation, because hiring managers, have a lot of business roadmaps in plan, right? They have to ensure the talent, comes on board. What are you going to be doing? So, it's a blessing in disguise, wherein, I agree, with Vinay, wherein he said that change management is slightly easier, right? So then it becomes fairly easy for you to translate, your solutions to, for some of these interesting examples. And I think, be very honest, share the use case very well, and different people, will have different, I would say trust issues. So tackle it accordingly.
Great. I think so. In accordance to what you guys were saying, I think we've already got a few questions coming in of very similar nature, where they're saying, Sandhya, asked, I'm working in a tech company. We are on fire nowadays. So the problem which I'm facing is that initially I will conduct telephonic round, Skype round, but before finalizing, you have to meet the person, and people are not comfortable due to the current situation. So again, I think the answer to that question does lie in what we've been discussing. I think the acceptance has to come through, as Khalid was also saying earlier. I think the acceptance of change is necessary. That this has to be a new process. And I'm going to transition into the next question, and I'm going to pose that to both Khalid and Megha as well. Simply because as soon as the remote hiring aspect comes in, the next one is the personal touch in the onboarding experience. I mean, how do you ensure that that is something that is enjoyable and does inculcate that sense of belongingness? This question comes to us from Iksha from Grofers, and thank you, Iksha, for the question. And firstly, I think Khalid, why don't you give it a crack?
Sure. I think it's an important question. I think it's a burning question everywhere. How do we hire people remotely? And then even if you've hired somebody remotely, how do you essentially get them into the fold of your organization? And it's not rocket science that we have to do it virtually, but the fact remains, how do you make that entire journey and experience? I think the aspect and the vision and should remain the same, that it's all about the experience at the end of the day. We just need to factor in that there is no physical co-location where you can actually meet with the person and as human beings, we like to see each other. And I think that's where the earlier question that we were talking about, the trust, also factors in, because since you can't meet somebody face to face, you have that trust deficit. In onboarding, it's the same thing. I think what couple of things that we need to focus on. One is we need to focus on the entire experience part. And now when we talk about experience, I don't have to take a lesson on design learning, but if you just deploy that entire piece here, methodology, you'll understand that you're designing a virtual onboarding for the candidate who has known nothing about your organization, what Vinay was talking about, how the candidate trusts you. And you need to ensure that what you used to do in first 2 days, because that were the first 2 days or first 1 week of onboarding, don't take that first 2 days as your onboarding, because now you have the flexibility to run this onboarding probably to a span of, let's say, 15 days and put it in structures which are consumable. Because if you were to put me in front of this wonderful panel, run this webinar for another 45 minutes after 1 hour, I'm telling you, there'll be only 5 people left. Because after some time, your consumability also goes down. So we need to make it very interesting. We need to spread it out. We need to get people learn the technology as soon as possible. At the same time, if you need to start to get them into Slacks and Yammers and connections and those kind of co-creation and collaboration tools quickly so that they start to engage. Provide them with the synchronous and asynchronous learning, which means that they can go and complete some learnings on their own. Yeah. The other piece is about the culture. I think that's where a lot of onboarding programs start to fail, especially in a virtual environment, because they're not able to help the newcomer assimilate into the culture. I think a lot of focus has to go there. It could be about interactions. It could be about activities. It could be about smaller 5-10 people coming together and understanding what it's all about and how does it relate back to their service line and the kind of work they do. So if I'm a programmer and you have a vision 2030 of 50 billion, how does it impact me at the end of the day? Because I'm just going to do the same job. So how does it relate back to them? And the last bit is also ensure that you're, and again, hiring managers now become your people managers who are going to be managing these teams. How forthcoming they are in terms of welcoming these people, how forthcoming they are in terms of, in the absence of looking at each other face to face, how do you ensure that video compensate to it, and your conversations, deep rooted understanding where they come from, if they have any challenges, creating this environment around them is going to be a huge, pivotal piece in terms of managing virtual onboarding.
Yeah, I think Megha, your take on the same?
Yeah, so I think Khalid said it pretty well, and he spoke about the overall strategy. But just to give like a quick tips and techniques to people around this. So first fact that I want to share, and this was very recently in one of the quite well-known HR magazine, without taking names, but the recent study shows that there is a 79% drop in hiring today, which is in last quarter. This particular quarter, we see a 79% drop in the demand. And obviously the forecast is that it's going to continue for at least one more quarter. So that's the forecast that I'm talking about today, which means your onboarding is pretty much, same drop percentage will happen, because obviously if hiring is not happening, then onboarding is also pretty much not happening. Now, which means that you have smaller set of people that you're focusing on, which means there is small pool of trust. So there is no more, a virtual onboarding program for say 100 people. And I'll give you an example. We were literally doing every week induction. Now we've gone to monthly inductions, and obviously everything is virtual today. But because the number of joiners are less, you automatically went to a zone where people are now waiting to come to a standard process of onboarding maybe once in a month, which were earlier like on a weekly or 2 weeks, depending on the organization that you are now, which means you're much more expected for people to create an experience environment, which typically means how do you connect and build that connection with the people who are joining as well. Because as much as fear there is with the employer, there is a lot more fear with the person who's joining as well. Oh my God, I'm joining virtually. And I'll give you a live example. I was having, this week itself with a very senior person that recently we hired in one of the other locations in the south part of India. And the person was saying, oh my God, I saw you last week, but it feels so different while I'm onboarding, while things are so sad, but it just feels so different. If I would have been in office, this would have been a different experience. And I said, why would you say that? I sit here, you sit in the other part of this country, irrespective of that, we would still have a virtual call. Irrespective of that fact, we would have still had a virtual interview. Irrespective of anything, we will still be interacting over chats and Teams or calls. So, sometimes it's just in the mind of us as, culturally, or so much we call as a physical distance. So I think first step is to just call out what's slowly making people uncomfortable, to say, this is normal, because, even not every organization is based in one location. We are multi-geography or multi-city organization. So we anyways do interact over a live medium. It's just that the pace and the amount and the quantum has just gone to a significantly high way, which means what we need to start doing is absolutely before hiring, and 3 key tips and techniques. Do a keep warm program, so that you are connecting with people much before what you're supposed to, which means in form of emailers where you may share how is the culture of the organization, what are some of the testimonies that people talk about this organization, some quick tips and nice policies to share about whether it's welfare policies, whether it's benefits policies, or how do you look forward to people who join, some of those things that builds that trust back with the associate, to say, oh, I'm joining best of the organization. Why can't you have a team call before the person joins to just engage with them that this is the team environment that I'm joining. Have an assimilation plan quite ready. Ensure that every manager, whether it's a techie, whether it's a a support function person who's joining, have an exhaustive, like a month-long assimilation program, which includes your cultural assimilation, which includes the values of the organization, which includes who's the buddy who's going to help understand the culture, which means connecting with senior leadership, connecting with the peer groups, connecting with who are the in this role, who are some people that I must know of, and the individuals start connecting with them. So these are some things that absolutely helps beyond just the traditional onboarding of 5-day 3-day that you will end up running. I think that absolutely helps in a virtual environment for an individual to get set for next 30 to 60 days.
Great. I think so. Yeah.
I just have one, and this is an experiment we did at Tone Tag, and I think everybody would really love to experiment with this. Guys, everybody who are sort of saying, how do we onboard, how do we integrate, how do we assimilate? You guys go watch a movie, you relate so closely to the character of the movie. You're so emotionally connected to the character. Storytelling is underrated and often forgotten as a skill to connect people. We use storyboarding instead of onboarding, where every department shares story of the context of why the department exists or why that team exists. The minute I'm telling a story to somebody, the emotional connect that we're talking about is automatically, made. And once that emotional connect is made, he or she will read any document that you share over emails, will go through it with full intensity. So try storytelling about your department instead of just, all your regular programs that you do. It will have a great impact.
I think one thing that I've interacted with a lot of the panelists before, and one thing I love about at least everyone who I've interacted with previously is they're all great storytellers. I've had a great experience with at least 2 or 3 of these folks at events, and I knew this was about to come. And as a marketing professional, I love the fact that storytelling is now a part of the employer branding conversation as well. And I think the questions that are coming in, about the emotional touch, belongingness, and how do we work on, I think storytelling is absolute key to that. Definitely, I think, thank you for sharing that. And I love that we got so many best practices in as well, right? So thank you so much to all 3 of you. I'm going to actually quickly have Jitendra answer one question, but I'm going to ask you to make it really, really crisp, because we want to jump to the next section as well. Jitendra, as the CHRO, one very key aspect will always be around the background, evaluation and everything, because eventually these decisions, how are these processes done, and a lot of those calls will be yours. They will be your decisions. So in these times, where we're all focused on virtual hiring, and hiring the right candidate is key. How do you ensure that the focus on the background evaluation does not drop?
So Prashant, I don't see there has to be any difference, in a remote scenario or a non-remote scenario, right? Because, we are essentially looking at quality of talent, and we have to understand, why do we do background verification? Well, I'll come to, for my take on background verification as a process, but I think it doesn't have to depend on, whether your offices are open or your offices are not open, right? It is primarily dependent on, how sure, are you about, hiring a particular talent. Now, let me come to, my own take on background verification. I believe that background verification is, as a process, is largely looked at, as a very, very mechanical or a tick mark activity in a lot of organizations, both from a vendor perspective as well, and also from an organization perspective. And if you ask recruiters, then they'll really hate background verification process, right? Because they have really spent huge amount of time making that offer. And then there is a BJV, which has gone to a third party. It comes back, with a red saying that, hey, sorry, you can't proceed. But fundamentally, I believe that, as organizations, we also need to kind of look at background verification as a strategic process, not just as a mechanical process. It's okay to, have a volume of BJVs rolling out, but I think how you look at, background verification, as a strategic tool needs to change. I'll give a very interesting example. We do not empanel any third party for doing a background verification process. Right. Primarily, for the reason that, it's largely mechanical, and, there's a lot of time which is involved, and ultimately what you get is very different than what you expect. So background verification is largely, considered as a ref check as well. And I'm sure, all of us would agree that, around 60 to 80% of the verifications happen on references, right? So, but I personally feel that, that's not the right approach. And I'll also tell you, the reason why I say that. There is very, very less objectivity and a huge amount of subjectivity which is involved in reference checks or the background verifications that you do internally. So if you're hiring, let's say, a director engineering, you see that, okay, these are the 2 companies, this person has worked in, you just immediately rang up someone and say that, hey, how is this guy? They say, हाँ, अच्छा है, this guy is good. हाँ, चलो ठीक है, एक positive reference आ गया, right? So what I've seen is, yes, it is good to have reference checks, but I think as HR professionals, it is our utmost responsibility, because I have seen personally, And I've made those wrong calls as well, wherein I have not been very, very objective in understanding, about the reference, right? Yes, it's good that you have a credibility attached to the person who's giving you reference, but you also have to be very objective in terms of what do I want to understand from this conversation. And one of the very interesting example which I had was, I took a call saying that, hey, I'm not going to hire this person based on the reference. And that guy later on, was being hired by me through under circumstances and was a great guy. It's just that, at a particular point in time with a particular manager in a particular organization, he had a very different experience altogether. So my take is that, whatever we do, whether we do a blind ref check or we do references provided by the provided by the candidate, or let's say, through a third party, we have to be like super, super objective in being very clear on what we want to understand, because experiences are different. Let's not make experiences as perceptions to hire. Let's only hire based on what experience do I need, and then look at the background verification process. So this is my long take on the crisp question that you asked.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jitendra, and thank you for sharing a personal, aspect to it as well. Before I move on to the next section, I think one question that I want to ask all the attendees, and it's a question that's actually, relatable to what's being asked by a lot of people as well. And we'll have a poll going up on that, very, very shortly as well. It's basically around, is your organization fully prepared? And when I say fully, I mean, if this is the normal, are you ready to start this process from tomorrow? Is your organization fully prepared to make remote hiring the new normal? Simple yes or no answer, which is why we won't give it more than 10 seconds. And would love for everyone to sort of quickly get their take in. And it's anonymous, so don't worry, we're not going to sort of go ahead and start asking your organizations.
I realize panels also can vote this time.
Great, I think. So
feedback well taken.
Absolutely.
Prashant, while people are voting, I think, we just love to exaggerate situations. Is organization fully prepared? Is organization fully ready? I mean, this is a temporary situation. It will change, and we'll come back in moderation to use the best practices. It's not changing that much. I mean, let's relax.
So Vinay, similar to, some of these media stories going around, right? Wherein sorry, I'm just taking a little bit.
No, absolutely. I guess that is what we're trying to get to, and that's what's come across in the poll as well. 60%, close to 60% feel that it's not, they're not necessarily ready, and they do need some kind of a playbook or a blueprint. And that's also a question that's come across from Vinay from Dr. Reddy's, and it's a question that's been asked by our live attendees as well constantly. If I was to ask you, Vinay, and I'm gonna ask Vinay first. Vinay, what would be the ideal remote hiring process for you if you were to implement it starting tomorrow?
So I think remote hiring process.
And my request is, so that we can take as many questions as possible, let's keep it crisp.
30 seconds or 30 seconds.
Perfect.
In fact, I answer to somebody as well. I think there'll be a lot more focus on psychometric assessment tools, which were just used, I don't know for what, in most organizations. So I think there'll be a lot of focus on that. I was talking to a handwriting analyst, somebody who analyzes handwriting to understand a certain traits of an individual. Now, this is a very new thing, but a lot of these things already existed. So that there'll be a change and an appreciation in that sense. There will be virtual interviews, and there will be a lot of assignments where people would be invested in the process just to see how clear they are. So I just see these three things, psychometric assessments, assignments, and interviews in the process.
Great. Khalid, your quick take as well on this?
I think it would essentially mean if you need to look at the entire life cycle of a recruitment. So while Vinay spoke of assessment, I think it needs to transform how even the business assessments are done right now. So while it was an interaction earlier, now it could be more of case studies, and it could be proctor-based case studies you can look at. Then you're going to also look at some of the other assessments feeding into it, your technical assessments coming into it. And the last bit going to be is, the learnability, which is very difficult to capture, but at the same time putting people into situations which are difficult, because what we want are the people who are nimble and agile. And at the same time, if we find people who are fixated on their industry because they have worked in that industry forever and now that doesn't exist, and the resistance to change, I think those kind of people will be less preferred, because at this point in time, your skill sets are changing, your industries are amalgamating, changing. The world is changing around us. I know Vinay, has joked about it that it will change, but I think a new normal has already emerged from that perspective. So it's not going to be something drastically different. We're going to wear suits and go to office, space suits. But at the same time, we're going to also have this new world impacting all the other works that we do. Last bit, I think the question about being future ready in terms of remote hiring. Look at the cost impact at the end of the day. So any smart business would want to operate in that model to maximize the cost, but obviously we're going to have some positions which will not go to remote at all.
Great. I think so. Once again, I think what we sort of got from that was, again, that a lot of these aspects, from cost, to the personal touch, a lot of these things are involved in this process. So while we may not have a ready-made playbook for all the attendees to, take and go ahead and implement, but do try to customize this as per, whatever you think is suitable for you. And on that note, I'd like to quickly ask one question, and it's a simple one-line answer that I would request all four to give at this point, right? The question is actually about the flip side. Do you see the fill rates or lower dropouts, actually coming into play? Because what we've Anita from Abbott asked these questions. Have you seen the impact on the hiring cycle, lower dropouts or better fill rates because of virtual hiring? Like, what's your take on that? From whatever you've experienced in the last few months. Megha, do you want to go first?
Sure. So Prashant, see these, it's very difficult to answer this, and I'll tell you why. See, if there is, and I'm going back to the same stats, if there are 79% lesser demand, so then what necessarily happens is, if I am a person, I have limited opportunities. So automatically it will impact the fact that if I'm getting two options, I would want to explore those two options, because now no more there are 10 options available in the market. So that definitely has an impact overall on the fill rate. So I think there is still a lot stats around saying, does it have an impact because we have gone in the virtual mode, or is it because of the demand and the supply piece of it? Because I think both of the equations does play a lot of role. Like, I'll give you a simple example. Today, there were a lot of resignations that happened. Today, those resignations have been withdrawn by people, by the way. And there are multiple of those that we have seen in the last 3 months. I'm not sure about others, but at least we have seen in our organization. And that's primarily because, people are scared to right now move on the jobs, or even to the fact that, the new organization have withdrawn the offers too. So that also shows up the picture that, people have started to be more committed and loyal to the current organization. And similarly happens with obviously the new place that you're getting an offer. So definitely we've seen that, the offer dropout percentage have gone pretty low, but I feel that these are a lot more is also articulated around the demand and the supply piece.
All right, great. Does anyone have something different, or do you all agree?
I just wanted to add, if I had an oracle ball, crystal ball, I would have been an oracle and tell what's going to happen. But my assessment is that organization will be very choosy in hiring now, because they need to essentially look at what they need and at the same time survive the current scenario. Some are bootstrapped, some are developing, some are already developed, but everybody's looking at their pockets. I think what's going to happen is these numbers may fluctuate based on few things, because right now, even if there are jobs, people are not ready to move because of the situation and because of the lockdown. So you're not going to have a larger pool to tap into anyhow. At the same time, you're going to see a lot of resistance in terms of people making themselves uncomfortable going into a scenario where they don't know what's going to happen to the industry or the organization eventually. So you're going to have brands attracting more people compared to lesser known brands. That's going to happen. Your fill rates may or may not impact as much, because your number of positions are also lower at this point in time. So it may impact from a geographical perspective, but otherwise, if you have the entire structure made out from your hiring, onboarding and deployment can happen remotely, I think you will be in a better shape as an organization.
Right. So I think we'll be in a better position to answer this question once we, enter some phase of normalcy, and then we will actually realize how the job market is actually right there.
So just to add to this, Prashant, I mean, I personally feel that the fill rates are not low, or probably, it's not reducing due to the remote hiring context, or let's say, you have totally gone virtual. I don't think, it's correlated. But I think people have certainly, become more aware, and there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty around. So I think the rates are slightly less. They are probably more backouts, or let's say, people are going back to their own firms just because they are evaluating they are being very prudent about evaluating risks. And that's what, all of us anyways, for have to do, whether it's a candidate or it's an organization. So I don't think it's primarily because of, for moving into a new environment. I don't think that largely, is going to be related.
Right. So I think again, so that's another different take that we see. I think it will depend on how it plays out in the in the future. One poll that again we'll just do one last poll, and this is largely about the biggest challenge that's related to technology. Now, technology is key. I think anyone who hasn't adapted yet is now forced to adapt, and I think the digitalization of HR has been spoken about for years. Now it's absolutely there. So, what is the biggest challenge related to technology when it comes to remote hiring? We've been pretty transparent with our options. It could be a lack of budget, lack of training, and or lack of stakeholder resistance. And again, I think this question is very important from the point of view understanding where the attendees are struggling, where the recruiters are struggling. So I think another 5 seconds, we'll take this down and see where we are on it. And after this, I have one question.
I want to say this, Prashant. I think when you're putting lack of budget, I think it's going to get more answers there.
I think, let's see. So, Khalid, then that is the unfortunate reality of,
I think it's the third point where people paint as lack of budget more often. Not coming.
All right. So it's the third point is, so see, it's pretty even. So everyone is sort of struggling with their own piece. And
I'll tell you why. I think, Khalid, to that point, I think everybody realizes that, boss, money is not a problem. People will say budgets, but they know that they're spending money on something else, but they're not spending here. Yeah. So I think it's more of resistance that people can see through, right? I mean, we as leaders have a tough job when we talk of budgets, but the reality is what it is.
Yeah. And let me give you one, because I heard Oracle from Khalid, and it reminds me that I saw very recently that roadies have started doing online auditions. Now imagine in a normal situation, people will stand in a queue since midnight. So today they just have a slot and they do it online. So how cool is that, by the way, for people?
Megha, you've done me a favor because my next question is about, one very similar aspect, not exactly roadies auditions, but what I mean to say is within the technology piece, walk-ins were a huge norm in the pre-pandemic days. And I'm going to ask only Vinay for this because post this, we will be looking to sort of bring closure to the proceedings. But Vinay, Shubhra from BMC Software asked, walk-in were a norm in the pre-pandemic days, especially for junior roles. Now, what role can technology play so that our time to hire is not impacted in a virtual hiring environment? So I think this is something that, I think, because I think we work together on hiring events as well, walk-in drives, a lot of these things. So which is why if very quickly you could share your take on this.
Yeah, I think technology is already available to aid in your hiring efforts. Technology was never a challenge. Challenge was really mindset. What is changing now and what needs to change is the mindset of people to accept the new reality and get moving on with it. But more importantly, Prashant, and we have not really spoken about this, but since there's a lot of recruitment community here, and I have this angst with the recruitment fraternity in general, that we do not respond enough to candidates. Now, if it were a walk-in event where somebody walks in and attends an interview, he or she will also make an assessment based on the body language, based on what is happening, whether he or she is selected or not selected. In these times, to build your credibility, to build your brand, to reduce your offer dropouts, to reduce a lot of these things that happen, I think we have to walk the extra mile as an HR community to be over-responsive. If we post a job, we have to stop or pause the job as soon as we get 100 responses, get done with them, then restart the search. We see so many jobs that are posted, thousands of people are applying, they just don't know what is there. We also write responses saying, you'll only get a call if you're shortlisted. So I have to keep waiting, okay, if I get a call, I'm shortlisted. Let's be fair, right? I think more than technology or more than more than tools available which are already there. I think it's our mindset to be over responsive will help us attract talent in these tough times. That's my view.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing. While I agree to the fact that the technology is available, but I also feel that there would be new set of technologies that would emerge, and we would see a live example. And I'm forgetting which brand it is, whether it was Volvo or Volkswagen, who used AI for hiring, wherein you can sit in a car and computer will ask you questions and everything will be recorded, and basis that you will start to shortlist. Which means today, we still do an interview, and I'll give you an example. Today we do a panel interview through using Zoom, but we haven't gone to a recorded format still for an interview process, wherein people can post questions file, you can record, and then you can give it to the panel and shortlist. We've never thought about that. So technology will come in new shapes and form with obviously the new pandemic, whether it's related to AI, whether it's related to recorded versions, whether related to software which somewhere exists, which can just screen your resumes. We haven't gone through that level. I think we still use a tested and tried traditional format of having virtual interviews. I think technology will also move much faster with obviously people working remotely and work from anywhere kind of an environment.
Again, I think great. So that again comes from something that you've experienced within your own, something you've seen, and you think that also will have an impact on how technology is used within the remote hiring workspace as well. Now not only have I run very, very close to the end of time, but what I will definitely take, one very important aspect is, since we're not able to take all the questions, since we're not able to do everything within 1 hour, I think the best way to close, the eventual purpose of this webinar is to get some best practices in, right? I'm going to go one by one to each panelist, and this time I'm going to go in reverse order. We'll start with Khalid. Yes, yes, Khalid. When it matters, we've come to you first, and now Megha has to go last. All right, Khalid, coming to you first. I think the attendees, me, everyone listening, would love to hear 2 best practices. That you've seen through any colleagues, implemented at your own organization, or something that you would recommend within these remote hiring or technology hiring times.
Right. So I have a laundry list of wish lists that I want we will do. But I'm just gonna talk about 2 things that we have already done in EY. One is we are looking at, given this new environment, we are talking about managers not able to do the interviews, candidates struggle too. So we are working on a small little document which talks about how a candidate can leverage everything around them to be a better, to be an employee for EY. It's like an interview prep guide, which talks about how do you set up your video, how do you prep for the interview, what should you know, because it's not a physical environment. They can't talk to anybody.
So an interview preparation module, sort of.
Correct, interview preparation. The second piece we've done is also looking at, we've hired people from campus. We want to ensure that they are also engaged because unlike a lateral, they don't know a lot of people in industry. So we have arranged some kind of, virtual meet and greet for them, wherein we can leverage that time to have them interact with some of our leaders within the organization. I think that's also helping us build that vacuum where nothing is happening.
Great. Perfect. I think that's great, precise points. Thank you so much, Khalid, for that. Jitendra, I'm going to come to you next.
Yeah, so one best practice, or rather 2 best practices, as you asked, is one is don't just kind of, implement or accept any advice that you hear, whether here or anywhere else. But I think these are times where, people keep talking about, a lot of new things which sound cool or seem cool, right? So I think always look for the context, right? So for me, if I have to move to a remote hiring solution, let's say, right, don't just go by, okay, this sounds cool and, let's go with this particular technology, etc., etc. Look at, whether it is solving a particular context or you or no. If you are a manufacturing company and if you have to kind of move to the new scenario, what are some of the problem statements that you have and what will solve them? Rather than, just, look at a magazine, get something, which is flashy and say that, okay, we want to implement this, doesn't work like this. So I think that's number one. Second, best practice, and which always, is fundamental to, HR and recruitment is have a more data oriented approach, because these are the times where you get a lot pressurized as well. Hiring managers will come and say that, hey, the pipeline is pretty bleak. And then that, why pipeline is bleak, because, candidates are not available in the market and the talent market is paying differently, right? So there's going to be a lot of questioning. There's going to be a lot of pushback as well. So always try and ensure that if you have a data orientation approach with you. Third thing, something that we did as an organization is we completely re-engineered the entire talent acquisition process in the last 4 months, right from how candidates have to look at this, how hiring managers needs to start kind of, changing, in terms of the remote situation. So we looked at the entire virtual scenario and re-engineered the entire talent acquisition process in the last 4 months. So these are the three things that we did at Moengage.
Great. So I think reinvention and innovation has also played an important role for you, and I think kudos on that as well. Vinay, I'm going to come to you next.
Sure. I think one point that Khalid mentioned, and in fact, I've seen Khalid's team do this in the past as well, is really prepare the candidates for the conversation. And it is amazing when you prepare your candidate for the conversation, the connect you build. Not just technical preparation, that is, how do you get on the video, how do you do all of that, but I think a preparation of who they're meeting and what those people would expect will give a confidence boost. So one, definitely everybody as recruitment leads here on this call should get their teams to get their candidates to prepare. Second, I think I would not settle for anything less than 100% response rate to any application that comes into me, which means that we have to target 100% response rate. I think candidates deserve that. However busy, how many ever thousands of applications we get, either we, then moderate our application flow, but we have to respond. That's an angst that's building up. And as a best practice, if you're able to do that, there'll be a lot more credibility and also impact on your offer declines, by the way.
Great. Megha, if we could quickly share 2 best practices from your side as well. I think.
Yeah, so I think one of the best practices that I want to call out. Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Perfect. So I think one of the best practice that I want to talk about is, look at the entire
Looks like I think we lasted the entire hour, but that's when the technology and internet has sort of left us, unfortunately. What we'll do is we'll try to get Megha to post these 2 best practices across social media platforms as well, and we'll try to get those to you. But unfortunately, on that note, we will have to wrap this up for today. It's sharp at 5, so by hook or by crook, we have managed to manage everything within 1 hour. I'm extremely grateful. Megha, yeah, hi Megha, welcome back. But I was just in the process of winding everything up. So I think it would be great if you could just drop the 2 best practices on the chat as well. I think everyone would be, extremely informed for that. I think we've maintained about the first count that came in. I think we've got about 95% of you have stayed with us at least. I think the 5% must have had some work. I'm not going to critically analyze this webinar, but I'm going to say they must have had some work, which is why they decided to drop off. But extremely grateful to all the panelists. Absolutely.
Don't worry. It's okay.
Yeah, so to all the attendees, thank you for spending your 4 to 5 with us on a Thursday. We'll be back again in another fortnight. To all the panelists, wonderful insights. We're very, very grateful to all of you for being here, sharing your insights. To all the attendees, while you drop off, please do fill the feedback form, because if you don't give us feedback, we can't come back better. Thank you for saying it's a wonderful webinar. Love the chat comments that are coming in. Appreciate it. And once again, I think from all of us, I think very, very hopeful that you're all safe, taking all the precautions, and all the best to everyone from me and the panelists. Thank you, guys.